Well, today we look back at the attack 40 years ago in 1978 that preceded the 1985 police bombing of MOVE and led to the arrest of those who became known as the MOVE 9. We're joined now by Debbie Africa, the first of the 9 to be released from prison. At the time of her arrest, she was 8.5 months pregnant with her son, Mike Jr. He was born inside the prison. On June 16th, after nearly 4 decades behind bars, Debbie Africa was released and reunited with her son, who now also joins us. They're speaking to us from Mike's home just outside of Philadelphia. Debbie is on parole and unable to leave the county she's in to travel to our usual studio in Philadelphia or here in person in New York City. I should note that 2 members of MOVE 9 died in prison. The others, including Debbie's husband, Mike's father, remain eligible for parole. Debbie and Mike, we welcome you both to Democracy Now! Debbie, how does it feel to be free?
It feels good. Feels good. Feels like a heavy load had been lifted off of my heart. You know, and particularly talking about my son and being united with him, I should say, because it's not even a reunification because I've never been with him. So, you know, it just feels really good. It also feels a little bit heavy just because my sisters were not released at the same time we were all up for parole in May. I was released, but they weren't. And so leaving the prison was a good feeling for me, but it was also, you know, not a good feeling because they did not get released. And, you know, as I've been saying, that we were all arrested the same day, not only my sisters, but also the rest of the MOVE 9. We were all arrested the same day. We were charged with the same charges. We were tried together. We were given the same sentence, as was stated by the judge at the time. He said, since you say you're a family, I'm going to oblige you and sentence you as a family. So we were all given 30 to 100 years each. But when it came time for us to be released, we were not released as a family. As the judge said, we were not released together. And even more blatantly, Janine and Janet were not released with me. And so their case, everything was the same.
Well, Debbie, I wanted to ask you, you came up for parole several times before they finally granted your parole. Could you talk about that process of applying for parole and what made the parole board this time change their mind, if you have a sense of that?
Well, yeah, I have been up for parole, as with the rest of my MOVE 9 family, since 2008. We were all eligible in 2008, and we were denied repeatedly, year after year, or some were given 2 years at a time. But I personally was given a year, and then another year hit, and then another year, and then another 2 years. But they were saying the same thing. They were putting on our reports that there was different issues, a lack of remorse, a lack of motivation for success. And then this time, which would have been my 8th time going up for parole this May in 2018, we finally just had to get somebody else involved, somebody who could actually have the legs and have the means to be able to take all that we have done while in the prisons, to put it right in front of the parole board, to put it right in front of the DA, to put it right in front of Philadelphia, to see that MOVE people, we are still good people. And they had to see that, so that we had to actually get an attorney to actually make that point. And because of all the support that MOVE has had over the years, you know, it just helped bring that point home. It helped bring it to the forefront, you know. So the support that John Africa generated through some terrible examples that happened, you know, through the city, and with MOVE, it was just the support of the people that pushed the issue And with the attorney being the one that had the legs and that had the means to be able to present a package to the parole board to make them just really pay attention is what I feel made the difference.
Debbie Africa, you were all charged and convicted of third-degree murder. They said that you were involved with the killing of this police officer from your home. Now, the Move 9 have always claimed innocence, denying they shot anybody, blame the officer's death on accidental friendly fire of other officers. They never accused you directly of killing Officer Rapp. Would you like to comment on this 40 years later as others remain in jail waiting to be freed, including your husband, Mike Africa?
Well, no, I was never directly said to have had a weapon or to have killed the officer. But at this point, 40 years later, it has been 40 years, and it's 40 years later. What I want to say about that is that it was a tragic day. It was not a good day, you know. I don't want to glorify it. You know, I don't have any, any glorification feelings in me to even really relive it, because it was a tragic day. I really don't like even bringing it up because, you know, people have suffered and still suffering behind it. And the main thing I would like to focus on is not only helping pull people together and unifying people to push forward for a better day for not only Move, but for a lot of people who are suffering out here, but also to bring about the example about the Move 9 being innocent.
I wanted to ask
my husband.
I wanted to ask your son, Mike, who's sitting next to you, Mike Jr. The Guardian newspaper described you as a penal orphan of the Black Power movement. For almost 40 years, you're visiting your mother or your father in two different penitentiaries. The first time you're together with your mom in this month, not involving bars. How does it feel? And what are your comments on reuniting after 40 years? You were born in prison.
I was born in prison. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for having us on this show. I appreciate the exposure to get this information out. But yeah, so how does it feel? It feels like my mom said. It feels bittersweet. It does feel really good. I mean, the feeling of bringing her out of that prison and like knowing that I'm visiting this prison that she's in for the last time. Like, that felt euphoric. It was like, this is amazing. This is something that I've been waiting for all my life, something I've been working so hard for with the rest of the people, my family, the Move organization. It's just been so good. It felt so good to be able to take her home, put her in my car, and just never have to go back there for her. But it did feel bittersweet. I mean, every visit that I've ever been on with her since I've been in the organization, I've seen Janet and Janine too. And so to leave the prison with her and take her home, knowing that they are still back there, that was heartbreaking. It's still just thinking about it now. And like, I almost felt like I was turning my back on them, you know, just walking away. I mean, I had to do it to take Mom home, but leaving Janet and Janine in that prison was devastating. And it's also devastating, too, that although Mom is home, my dad is still in prison. And Eddie is still in prison. And Delbert. And, you know, when I think about the other people, like, I think about the fact that Janet and Janine, specifically, two of their children were in the earlier described May 13th bombing, where the city of Philadelphia, the police dropped the bomb on our house. And Janet and Janine's kids were in that house. They were murdered. They were shot to death and burned alive. And Janet and Janine remain in prison. And that, to me, is a total injustice. So it's bittersweet. I mean, it's nice to have her home. I'll be telling the story about how the the first night she came home, I went to her bedroom and I knocked on her door and she told me to come in, and I went in and as she was standing there, we were talking and I looked down at her feet and I noticed that she was barefoot. And when I looked down and I saw her feet, I realized that was the first time I'd ever seen her feet before. And I was talking to my friend Bobby and I was explaining to him what happened. And Bobby said something that was so profound to me. He said, you're learning for the first time at almost 40 years old what babies learn about their mothers. You know, and it was just like, it's really true. Mom has been, she was in a time capsule. There's so many things that's happened in the 40 years that she's been locked away. And so, you know, trying to get her adjusted to life out here on the streets, learning the technology, learning the way the cars are on the streets, learning the way the people think, different things that didn't exist 40 years ago, like Home Depot or Lowe's or cell phones or CDs, whatever, you know. So that process is really interesting and is really fascinating, and is also very enjoyable, you know, going through this. It's almost like a role reversal, like a father. She described it as kind of like a fatherly type relationship currently, but you know, it's really good. But we really need to focus on the other people that are still in prison.